Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about 2 soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games they come from, without getting too bogged down in music theory. Joe, what are this week's games?
Up first is 2006's LocoRoco, the delightfully cheerful game about rolling balls played by tilting the world around them, with a soundtrack full of cutesy vocals.
Following that is the game that tried to establish its own franchise, but ended up taking its main series to the next level of skyrocketing popularity, with some mature content controversy along the way. 2009's Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Joe, there is a new king among the ranks. No longer does Devil May Cry 3 and Kirby's Epic Yarn take the top crown as the most bizarre pairing we could have thought of. No longer is there a runner-up of Bloodborne and Katawa Shoujo. I think we've kind of seen this coming for a few weeks now, but LocoRoco and Modern Warfare 2 now takes that cake.
This pairing makes me so happy. It's so dumb. It's the dumbest pairing we've ever done, and man, I love it.
And I think somehow still there's a theme tying these two games together. I think they're both games about defending against invaders. Granted, one of them is a different country and the other one is from space, but
pretty much. If anything, you could say that these two games have a theme of the horrors of war. One just portrays it a little bit differently. There also might be a second theme between the two, but I'm going to wait until we get to my part, because yours is well known, being a controversy.
Yeah.
But mine also has a controversy behind it that I didn't know about. So we're going to get into that soon.
I can't wait. It's going to be such a good episode this week. Really excited. But first of all, thank you for helping cover for me with a solo episode last week. And to round out the season of spooks with Soma, I really do appreciate the flexibility and all that. And of course, you always have that flexibility as well. If you feel like it's, real life gets to be too much. Yeah, trust me, I know that well at the moment.
I think it was high art that I did Soma, a game about being on an Earth where everybody is dead, every single human being, and doing it alone. I don't know. I think we should put that episode in a museum. I'm just saying.
Yeah, let's just call it like that was the plan all along. But it's been a couple weeks since we've chatted, obviously. So, Joe, how are you doing? What are you playing?
Oh, man, I've played a lot of stuff since the last time we talked. I don't know if anybody else out there has this sort of thing, but I go through phases of what media I am consuming at like a rapid pace. So sometimes it's like 3 months and I'm watching anime and I go through like 6 series, or in this case, months where all I'm doing is playing games and moving on to the next one and the next one and the next one. It's just sort of a facet of my personality that I've only recently noticed. But I played Devotion, finally.
Oh, yeah.
It's really good. I think it might be better than Detention. For people that do not know, Devotion was the second game by Red Candle, who's a Taiwanese game studio, and Devotion itself was pulled down from Steam because somebody found Winnie the Pooh graphic in unused assets in the code or something about the premiere of China. And so people got very mad. The game got pulled down off of Steam because Valve is cowards. And they were going to put it on GOG, and then GOG backed out of that very quickly. And then they finally just released it on their own website. Go give them money. Play Devotion. Even if you're not really a huge fan of horror games, to be honest, it's not really that scary. There are 2 jump scares in the entire game. Just as a warning, because I know a lot of people that's a deal breaker. But yeah, it's really good. Fantastically written game. Other than that, I finished Resident Evil for the first time. That's a game that sure happened. It's better than Resident Evil 2. I played the remake. obviously.
Okay.
And, you know, it's dated, but it's still pretty good. I did the review for the Switch version of Fatal Frame Maiden of Blackwater. I'd never played a Fatal Frame game before. Got through the whole thing. I like the world building. I like the gameplay. The characters are some of the most boring, personality-less characters I've ever met in a game ever. And I finished a game called Carto because it was leaving Game Pass. So, you know, it's a little puzzle game where you can move tiles of the map in order to solve specific puzzles and get around the world and stuff like that. And I'm currently playing a game called Beast Breaker, which came out a couple months ago, which is, I've never played this game, so I don't know how accurate this comparison is, but it's a game where you fight monsters using Peggle gameplay. Is what I've seen it explained as. So yeah, lot of video games.
Sure sounds like it. Very busy, it sounds like. I've only been playing a couple games, but to completion. So I 100% beat Metroid Dread. Beat that on normal difficulty. Not gonna play hard mode, not gonna play speed run. If that makes me less of a Metroid player, so be it. I do think it's Game of the Year so far. I think that's gonna be up there in contention and maybe tough to beat. Certainly I think we'll be in nominees and all that, you know, come year's end at Game Awards and things like that. And then I also got that platinum trophy in Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Woo! I mentioned it was, you know, a pretty easy one to get. Would have taken only a few more hours, and yeah, with the help of some guides, really easy to get to. So checked that off. Now it's time to get back to the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. I'm on case 2-3, and just at the start of it. So a few more to go, and I guess quite a lot to go as well.
Yeah, the last two cases are very long, but good. They're very, very good.
That is good to know. I think I needed that break. After a lot of Ace Attorney, you kind of just like, whoa, slow down. All right, little break, and get right back into it.
2 full back-to-back Ace Attorney games, it turns out, might be too much to play at once.
Sounds about right. Let's hit up some composer follow-up news. We've talked about plenty of composers on the show before, and they're still doing great things in the industry. Last time, Joe, you mentioned that there was a State of Play presentation. And, you know, maybe we shouldn't have had very high hopes for it because it was a kind of a weird downer of a show, and then it ended strangely with a little devil inside. But one of the biggest news from it was that Bugsnax is getting a free big expansion that's coming in early 2022. It's called The Isle of Big Snacks, and that would mean more music from Seth Parker, who we talked about before for his work on Octodad.
This was a surprise to me. I genuinely did not expect anything to be added to Bugsnax, because it doesn't feel like a game that really needed it. But hey, I'll take it. That game is super fun, and more people should play Bugsnax. Meanwhile, in interesting news, I think probably the most interesting news that came out of this week by far, we have talked about Shoji Meguro probably more than we've talked about any other composer on this show ever.
He's the Atlas Persona guy.
Yeah, we have covered almost every game that he has worked on. But he is leaving Atlas. He will still be working in freelance capacity, which seems to be where most of the big Japanese composers have started moving anyways. He's still in good standing with Atlas, so we'll probably still see him working on at least some Persona games. Granted, they have been sort of lowering his workload on certain Persona games recently, especially the spin-offs with like Atsushi Kitajo and all that.
Yes, definitely. But I mean, if and when Persona 6 happens, you know they'll call on Meguro again.
Yeah. And he's also kind of stepping away from just being a composer because he wants to make his own indie games, and I think that's really rad, and I cannot wait to see what he does. Who knows if he'll be a Yoko Shimomura, where she's brought in for every Kingdom Hearts game, despite the fact that she's been freelance for years, or if he's a Nobuo Uematsu who just comes in, does a couple of tracks every once in a while, then leaves. That kind of thing.
Hey, as long as he's happy, I think that's the most important thing, but definitely an important update in the Japanese composer space. Some recent game releases came out, such as Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, and that score was from Richard Jacques. Also, Voice of Cards, The Isle Dragon Roars. That features music from Keiichi Okabe. And this week features Call of Duty Vanguard with music from Bear McCreary. So, some composers we've talked about previously, their work is starting to finally hit store and digital shelves.
Just seeing Keiichi Okabe's name on this is like this foreboding thing, because let me break it down for you real quick. This year has a soundtrack by Keiichi Okabe, 2 soundtracks by Leonard Rain, a soundtrack by Bear McCreary, a soundtrack by Kan Gao, Takaharu Ishimoto, Nobuo Uematsu, what might be one of his last ones.
Revo.
Revo. Oh god, I even forgot about Bravely Default. Yeah, no, he's in there too.
It's gonna be a ridiculous best of 2021. Even if it hasn't been so hot on the games front, I feel like people are starting to kind of pull together that list of like 5 or 6 games that are probably gonna be in like Game of the Year contention. But oh my goodness, on the soundtrack front, I'm scared for us, Joe.
There's so much, and we're gonna... oh man. It's gonna be great, and also we should probably start getting started on that already.
Yep.
In less frightening news, To the Moon is officially 10 years old. That is one of my favorite games of all time, even though I think the sequel that came out this year might surpass it and take its spot. And if you're very curious about that, hey, the whole trilogy and A Bird's Story is currently on sale this week to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of To the Moon. And you, that's right, you listener, should play those games. They're really, really good.
Yeah, definitely check it out. It's also crazy that it's been 10 years. That's nuts. And time is ridiculous. And finally, Grant Kirkhope has released a remix soundtrack for Banjo-Kazooie. He calls it Banjo-Kazooie Rejiggied. I believe it's like 10 tracks that are kind of remixed, remastered from the original Banjo-Kazooie game. Just kind of reimagined, put a new spin on it. And I think that's streaming pretty much everywhere.
It is, and I have not had a chance to listen to it yet, but I'm hoping I get a free moment sometime soon, because, hey, Grant Kirkhope's really good, and the Banjo-Kazooie soundtrack is really good, and to hear him go back to it sounds like it's going to be super, super rad. I'm very excited. All right, it's time to jump into a, obnoxiously cheerful, happy game. Why? Because I just spent the last month talking about nothing but grim, serious horror games, and I needed to go way to the other end of the spectrum just to, palate cleanser. You get what I mean. Let's talk about LocoRoco. So LocoRoco was originally released for the PSP on June 23rd, 2006 in Europe. Came out in Europe first. That's bizarre. July 13th, 2006 in Japan. And September 5th, 2006 in North America. So it had an even longer window between Japan releasing and North America releasing than Europe to Japan. What a weird order to release the game in, but hey, there you go. It was developed by Japan Studio and published by Sony Computer Entertainment. I don't know how to explain the story of LocoRoco myself. We'll get to my experiences with it later, but I figured nobody's going to get better than the Wikipedia synopsis. So, quote, living peacefully on a faraway planet, the LocoRoco and their friends, the Mui, help grow vegetation and look after nature, making the planet a pleasant place to be, playing and singing the days away. When the Moja Troop comes to the planet to take it over, the LocoRoco do not know how to fight against these invaders from outer space. So basically the game is played by putting you in control of the planet instead of the LocoRoco themselves, and you help guide the LocoRoco around by rotating the level in order to roll them around. You can also press down both L and R and then release, and they will jump, and then L and R obviously are left and right tilt. You start each level with one LocoRoco, but every time that LocoRoco eats a berry, they grow by 1. Up to 20 is the max you can get, and that number also decides how many LocoRoco you can split them into multiple smaller ones, depending on their size. And they can also come together and morph together into a big LocoRoco. Look, this game is weird. I would put it in multiple ways in the same category as Katamari Damacy.
I was getting that vibe too, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very, very similar sort of point A's to point B on that. And you can jump both for defeating enemies and clearing gaps, obviously. And that's the whole gameplay. You rotate the screen and you have the LocoRocos jump. That's LocoRoco. You can pick from 5 types of LocoRoco, being yellow, who is the one you start with, pink, blue, red, and black. The color you play as has no mechanical difference, but it does change the musical choices that can play during levels. So every single color has a different vibe. They have their own dedicated vocal artist per color, which we'll get into in a little bit more detail later. But yeah, it's a really interesting way to do a soundtrack, I think. So the only real question is, can the LocoRoco defend their happy planet from the Moja? And this is where I will ask, Peter, what are your experiences with LocoRoco?
I put LocoRoco alongside a couple other PlayStation franchises that I believe all got remastered kind of around the same time. It'd be Parappa the Rapper, it'd be LocoRoco, and it'd be Patapon.
Mm-hmm.
We've covered Parappa the Rapper on the show before. I think that's pretty clear. That's, the original PlayStation game with the basic rhythm gameplay and all, kind of like the grandfather of that kind of rhythm sort of genre.
Largely credited with sort of building the foundation of the rhythm game genre.
Right. But I couldn't tell you the difference between LocoRoco and Patapon. And so that's just a lack of experience from playing it, I'm sure. But I can visualize the character looks, and yeah, LocoRoco, I just imagine big yellow blobs, and that's about it. And then I know the main theme of it. I was just we're trying to talk about oh yeah, LocoRoco and Modern Warfare 2. It's going to be a weird episode. What's the soundtrack? What's the main theme? Oh, yep, definitely heard this one before.
I had also only heard the main theme before researching this episode. I have not played LocoRoco. I was introduced to LocoRoco through my roommate Ben, who has played it, but I have not personally played it. Also, I think the difference between it and Patapon, I think both of them were PSP games.
Yeah.
But I believe Patapon is also a rhythm game. I'm also not super knowledgeable about what Patapon is.
I think it's is it rhythm action? Defeating enemies with rhythm game? I don't know.
Yeah, again, that's another game that Ben is a big fan of that I have never played. I just loved the main theme so much that when it came to being I want to cover something on the far end of the spectrum for a horror game, hey, you know what? Doesn't get much further than LocoRoco. And you're all going to hear in a bit why I say that.
A soundtrack that also definitely has a lot of Katamari vibes, for sure. I can see why you're drawn to it.
Oh, there are some songs here that you could put in a Katamari game and I would not bat an eye. Insane. They have to be coming from the same sort of inspirations. I refuse to admit otherwise. So how did this weird game come to be? So the main concept for LocoRoco came from director and designer Tsutomu Kono, who had previously worked on Team Ico's Ico, that game that the studio was named for. So the idea apparently came to him while riding a train in 2004, during which he sketched out a concept on his PDA of a game where there would be multiple characters that the player did not have direct control over. Side note, sketched on a PDA is possibly the most 2004 way for a game to come into being. Humanly possible. Do kids know what PDAs were?
No, they just think of it as iPads. Everybody had iPads, right?
Yeah, it's, sure, that's how it was, kids. Time didn't exist before the iPad. So he pitched this project twice in 2005, but was turned down both times because the executives understood the whole mechanic of tilting the screen, but what they didn't understand was that the player was not in control of the characters, and those characters were instead sort of controlled by AI. For some reason, this was a sticking point with them. So after being turned down the second time, he decided, okay, we're going to get something more concrete to show them, and he spent 3 months with a team of 8 people creating a prototype around LocoRoco. And that time, the pitch was accepted. The team doubled in size to 16, and then from there, the game took 11 more months to complete. So just over a year, this game was in development. When the project actually began, Kono opted to make it a PSP project because he wanted to differentiate it from the various big PlayStation 2 games that were already in development. And he also wanted to focus on making each aspect of the game unique. And hey, mission accomplished. I cannot say that there is any game quite like LocoRoco, except maybe LocoRoco 2.
You know, give the PSP more content as well. Definitely fits better on like that kind of scale. I think, yeah, if you're talking about going up against Kingdom Hearts 2 and then God of War 2 the next year, like that's kind of, you know, you're maxing out the PS2 at that point.
Oh yeah. It's the PS2 had plenty of stuff, though for some reason, and I don't understand why, my brain has trouble like realizing, oh, the PlayStation 2 and the PSP were at the same time. Because for some reason my head wants to be like, no, the PSP was PS3, but no, that was the Vita.
There was some, you know, rollover. I mean, we think of Peace Walker, and that was, you know, end of PSP, granted, but that was 2010.
That is true. One of the games that I really liked on PS3 came out on Vita with crossplay, and I don't know why that's so hard for me to justify. I don't know. Weird.
Mm-hmm.
So the simple controls of the game were actually a result of their desire to make sure that the game would appeal to basically any age demographic, especially young kids. They wanted this concept of simplicity to sort of, you know, you could hand a 5-year-old LocoRoco and they'll be able to figure out how to play LocoRoco. It's not hard. They also helped this theming by making it a 2D game, first of all, instead of the 3D games that they had worked on in the past. And they had experimented with multiple sort of aesthetics, including detailed textures, don't have any details on that, papercraft, and even claymation, which I think would have worked pretty well with the splitting up and the rolling balls and all that. But the final art style they decided on was just solid colors. That's the whole game. The whole game is various shapes and solid colors. And not only did they do that for the sake of simplicity, but also because, hey, turns out that art style was cheap.
Yep.
Didn't need to hire a full art team. One artist is plenty. There you go. Perfectly easy. It was received pretty well on release, actually. A Metacritic of 83, 85% on game rankings. Praise was given for its art style and music, but it was given some criticism because once you have the mechanics of tilting and jumping, those are the only mechanics in the game. It never introduces anything else. So people kind of felt this was repetitive. But I mentioned and hinted at this earlier, there happens to be a controversy that took place in LocoRoco before it came out in North America. So the problem was the design of the main antagonist group, the Moja. Now, Peter, I'm going to send you a picture of what the Moja look like and see if you can guess what the problem was.
This is great for audio podcasting, obviously.
Oh, don't worry. I'll explain it.
So we'll also throw it up here on the video version, so go check it out on YouTube at Rhymes with Asia. Oh, Japan, no. No, we can't have A dreadlock monster with big lips.
Yeah, it's for anybody only listening to the audio version. They are a ball that looks like it has dreadlocks, colored pure black, with thick orange lips. Yes, that's right, everybody. The Moja are essentially doing blackface. And that's not great. This was given a little bit of understanding due to the lack of history that Japan has with this kind of thing. They didn't really have a period where blackface was a terrible, terrible thing that we did to sort of make fun of marginalized people the way that we did. So there was a little bit of understanding there. I will say that the best part of this story, actually, this is a direct quote from Wikipedia, quote, "The accusation of racism came days before a similar charge against Sony for an advertisement for the white-colored PSP, portraying a white woman subjugating a black woman."
Christ.
Days. Oh, Sony was having a great week that week. I'm sure. They were asked by a couple of reviewers of like, could you guys just change the color just a little bit? Like, just make them dark green or something. And as far as I could tell, this was never done. Came out, Moja still looked like that. Unfortunate, but I don't know. What can you do? So, LocoRoco actually did win quite a few awards and nominated for even more. At the BAFTAs, it won Best Children's Game and Best Character, and was nominated for Best Audio, Best Original Score, Best Innovation, Artistic Achievement, Best Gameplay, and Best Casual and Social Game. At DICE, it won Children's Game of the Year and Outstanding Achievement in Original Music Composition. And that seems to be all of its award showings in 2006, but that's nothing to sneeze at. That's a lot of things. But unfortunately, the game sold incredibly poorly in Japan. 30,000 copies in the first week. But apparently it sold a lot better in Europe and North America, which is kind of baffling to me. Are you telling me a PSP game sold better here than in Japan? That does not seem right. But it did, and so that led to the release of a sequel, LocoRoco 2, in 2009. There was also a Halloween game that was digital only in America, so nobody remembers it.
Oh, was that maybe for the PSP Go?
I think it was for the PSP just in general, but probably came out alongside the PSP Go, if I had to guess. There are LocoRoco costumes in Little Big Planet, and also the yellow LocoRoco became one of the de facto mascots for the PSP. And as you alluded to earlier, it was released on PlayStation 4 in 2017, and I believe LocoRoco 2 is also on PS4. So if you want to play these games, that's the place to go do it. For the composer of LocoRoco, the head composer was a man by the name of Nobuyuki Shimizu. Here's his background details. He was born on December 14th, 1959 in Japan. All right, let's get into his discography. That's all he's got. His discography is immense, but not a lot of games on it. So I didn't realize that VGMDB, for whatever reason, also puts anime stuff on it, because pretty much all of his 133 recorded releases, one of them was a video game. And that was LocoRoco. I saw things like Bubblegum Crisis and Macross. Those were basically the only two anime names that stuck out to me. Didn't recognize a damn thing, but this man has done a lot of anime, so hey, there you go. Alongside Shimizu, though, this game also features music by Keme Adachi and Koji Nikura, who we have talked about in the past. Episode 88, Clock Tower, which brings it on back to Halloween already. It's too early for that. So as stated before, what color you play has no mechanical effect on the game, but it changes the music. And as I said before, the game's soundtrack is pretty much entirely vocal songs, and every single color has its own vocalist associated with them. And much like Nier, they're all in a made-up fake language. Quote from Wikipedia once more, Kono created the language by compiling a list of interesting words in katakana, which is the Japanese alphabet that is used to write foreign words, then altering the words slightly to make them sound cool in Japanese so as to mask their origins. What does that mean? Good question. Kono then sent the lyrics along with some of his preferred reggae, soul, and R&B music to the composers Nobuyuki Shimizu and Keme Adachi to complete the soundtrack. In terms of vocalists, you have Melody Chubak as Yellow, L-E-H, as Pink, Greg Irwin as Blue, Hiroaki Takechi as Red, Jeff Gader and Tomonobu Kikuchi as Black, Cameron Strother as Green, and Keme Adachi provides the vocals for the Mui Mui. And by request, the soundtrack uses as few electronic-sounding instruments as possible because Kono wanted the game's soundtrack to have a more live sound vibe to it.
Didn't mean that, couldn't tweak some things electronically, but it's a good thing to aspire to, I guess, at this time in the mid-2000s on PSP.
Yeah, basically, like, the farther you can get away from sounding blatantly like a MIDI, the better. I assume it was like, don't use synthesizers if you don't have to, etc., etc. All right, talked enough about the LocoRoco. It's time to hear the LocoRoco sing, literally, because that's what they're supposed to be doing throughout the level. Let's start critical track number 1. It's LocoRoco's song. The song was composed by Nobuyuki Shimizu. This specific version is the yellow version, with vocals by Melody Chubak. There is actually a version of this song for every single character with that vocalist.
Delightful.
Some of them sound really funny, actually. One of them is a guy, I don't remember which color it is, but it's a guy singing in the anime sort of drunk, nasally, high-pitched voice, if that means anything. And the best part of that is at the end of the song, they kept in the part of the vocal track where he starts coughing from having sung in that voice. It's awesome. I like this version the best, though. I don't think any of them touched this one. I will assume that at the time, Melody Chubak was probably a child, because this sounds a lot like a child singing. This is the main theme of LocoRoco as a whole, and this is the very first version you hear in the game because it is Yellow's theme, and yellow is the first color that you have access to. It's my favorite song in the game, even now. If you're not whistling this for the next 3 years after you've heard this episode, I have not done my job. It's so infectiously catchy. I adore this song. Granted, it's also what I imagine it sounds like as you slowly lose your sanity, but this song is great.
Yeah, this is the one I had heard before as well, so I think this, if you know anything about LocoRoco music, this stirred something in your soul to hear this again. Also good to hear a child singing. We sometimes hear it also in Katamari Damacy, and it's rare that one, you have a child performing, but also a child performing well. And so it's, good to hear. It's different to hear. And also you get a good sample of like what this made up language is like. It's a lot of gibberish. You can't pin it down as Japanese or French or anything like that. So it's a good example of like the oddity of this soundtrack and sound.
It's kind of weird too, because there are tracks on this soundtrack where I'm like, this sounds like Spanish, but it's not.
Right.
Or this
yes.
sounds like French, but it's not. And it's really interesting that somehow that all resulted specifically from mixing up foreign words in Japanese. Odd, but great. This song is so much fun. This is the vibe you're going to hear from pretty much everything in LocoRoco, and that includes critical check number 2, Boo Boo Poroche. Why no, I don't know how to pronounce these correctly. I'm making guesses.
When you have made up words, they go in your titles.
Yep, and it makes it hard to know how to pronounce them. This song was once again composed by Nobuyuki Shimizu. Vocals, again, by Melody Chubak, because while the last song was the main theme of LocoRoco, this is the main theme of LocoRoco Yellow specifically. It's just this rock song now. It's, again, disgustingly catchy. And this is the first one where I hear it and I'm like, oh, I could hear this in a Katamari game.
Sure.
100%.
Sure.
Like, it gives me vibes of Everlasting Love from We Love Katamari. It's just a fun song.
I also hear it and I'm like, dang it, I've heard this song before too. And I don't know if it's just like, I've always associated LocoRoco with like, oh, it's that kid singing. It's good to know that there are different vocalists, as we'll definitely get into hearing. But yeah, I had heard this one, was just like, oh yeah, well, the first one, the LocoRoco song, is like the one. There's something about Melody Chubak, this child singing, that really creates this identity, or at least one of the vocal identities for the game.
I kind of want to look into if she's done any other games, because she's really good. And this was back in 2006. I'd assume if she was a child then, she's an adult now, depending on how old she was. Might be brand new an adult. I don't know. But yeah, this is such a fun song. You know what else is fun though? Let's get into another vocalist, being critical check number 3, Mui Mui. This song was composed by Keme Adachi. Vocals are also by him, though obviously pitched up.
Yeah, obviously.
I would assume Adachi is a grown adult man whose voice does not sound like this normally. I would hope. As far as I could tell, this plays in some minigame. There are apparently 2 minigames associated with the Mui Mui. One is a crane game, which I don't think this is the song that goes with that, because there's a different song called Mui Mui Crane Game. So I feel like that's an easy assumption to make. That being said, though, this song is really good. It sounds directly out of a 50s style musical number. Like, I could, if you put this in Greece, obviously I'd know that it was not from Greece. But you get what I mean? Like, it has that like the snapping and the piano. It just has that feel, you know?
I'm not going to be able to get Alvin and the Chipmunks in Greece out of my head. Thank you for that one.
Oh, 100%. That's exactly what this is. You're correct.
It's catchy, though. And so if maybe Adachi was so embarrassed to have his actual voice in there, or if he wanted, like, the childlike sound, maybe this was a way of going about it, I suppose.
Yeah, just odd song, and I love it. Following that is critical check number 4. This is Ayo Ayo. This one was composed by Keme Adachi, vocals once again by Keme Adachi, as well as Le and Hiroaki Takechi, which you'll remember if you were listening earlier, are Pink and Red. They do the chorus vocals, like the background vocals, while once again the main vocals are done by a pitched up Keme Adachi. I don't really know where this plays. I tried figuring it out, couldn't figure it out, but I don't know, this song's really good. I could not bring myself to not put it on the Critical 5. Just like the heavy jungle-ish drums. You can kind of hear at the end of the clip, there are these very deep bass vocals that sort of give it this cool feel to it. And I don't know, it's a really, really fun song to listen to.
Yeah, it's nice and positive. Though now it's like Alvin the Chipmunks goes to Gullah Gullah Island or something. I don't know. But yeah, a different vibe for sure. Kind of bringing in this sort of sound to it. And we were talking about Shimizu and Adachi kind of infusing these different genres in here. This is a good one to mix in, especially for if you're having different parts of the planet that the LocoRoco have to traverse.
Mm-hmm. And now for critical track number 5. It's the credits song. We're going to talk about Etole Pukarate. Oh, yeah. Funky, funky. Oh, yeah. Corporation pan koraketo, shakareta paton, shurere roton bokuretso. Pan koraketo, shakareta paton, shurere roton bokuretso. Again, is that how it's pronounced? I don't know. Nobody knows except for Kono. This was once again composed by Nobuyuki Shimizu. Vocals by everybody. All of the vocalists for all of the LocoRoco are included in this song, which is super, super cool. Granted, it's not in the clip, but you should go look up what this song sounds like, listener, because it's just Mambo number 5.
Oh, yeah, the beginning of the clip is bump, 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 bump.
Dun, 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 dun. Like, it's just Mambo number 5.
Did they forget this song existed, or are they just not aware of American one-hit wonders? Yeah, I don't know. It's a choice.
It's weird. That being said, it's still a really good song in its own right, and like bringing all of the vocalists together for one song is super cool, and the context of that alone makes this song like 10 times better. I adore this song.
Yeah, especially for the clip being like at the end of the piece, right? It's kind of everybody now, kind of that sort of feeling, and that's neat. I just wish it had a more unique and creative face to it, because I'm only thinking of that original Lou Bega classic.
Like, I was listening to this song at work while trying to put together this Critical 5. I think I had to send it to like 2 people and be like, I'm not crazy, right? This is just Mambo number 5? Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Now, cutting room floor tracks. I got 2 of them. First one is Zapudo Garon. This one was composed again by Nobuyuki Shimizu. Vocals by Jeff Gader and Tomonobu Kikuchi, because this is Black's theme. And man, that is some funk. I applaud that. It's so good.
I love the instrument choices made in this one. It sounds excellent. Again, great picks to, again, just not rely on the synths and the midis and all that. Get those real instruments. This one like really sells that for sure. And it makes a lot of sense that you bring that up as part of like the history of creating the soundtrack here. The vibe I get from this one makes me think of like a villain track from a more modern Disney movie, which then it's like, all right, it's not related to the Moja. It's just a variation on one of the LocoRoco here, but I could totally see like someone like what, almost like Shiny from Moana in a way, like that kind of vibe to it. I don't know.
No, I could totally see that. Like these vocals are just about how they have so much fun kicking orphans or something. I don't know. There hasn't been a good Disney villain song in a long time. I think Shiny might actually be the last one.
Yeah, probably.
Oh boy. And my other track of the cutting room floor is another complete swing into another genre. It's Bucho Mio. Once again, composed by Nobuyuki Shimizu, vocals by Cameron Strother. This is Green's theme, and I think this one, more than any of them, this is from a Katamari game. Like, this sounds like Yu Miyake's work so hard. It's really, really good, but man, I was shocked to not see Katamari listed anywhere in this game's inspirations whatsoever, because this screams Katamari Damacy.
Yes, clearly, obviously. This is also, I think, a song we mentioned, like, taking inspiration from Spanish earlier.
Yeah.
I feel like I definitely get some Spanish inspiration from the words, the lyrics, tweaking it and all that. It also just feels like straight up, it's an anime opening or ending. Like, you can just throw it in there for sure, and it'll be fine.
It would fit real well as that, actually. I wonder why there isn't a LocoRoco anime, other than the fact that there are no characters.
And they'd have to talk in a certain language.
I'd do that. Hey, Sony, if you want to make a LocoRoco anime, I'll voice all the characters.
Just change the Moja design.
Change the Moja design before you release it, though, please. So what will I never forget about LocoRoco? I don't really have much that I can forget. I haven't played it. I want to play it. And I've been meaning to for years. And maybe I will when things sort of calm down a bit this year. But I'll never forget the main theme because it's one of the most delightful songs I've ever heard in a video game. And I'm serious. Everybody listening to this episode will have that song stuck in their head for the rest of their lives.
Honestly, I'm right there with you. I started the call with you, and I was already going ba 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 da ba da ba da 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 da. Like, it's just one of those themes, and it will never leave my brain. You're right. I'll never forget that.
Yep, that's my gift to everyone. And by gift, I mean curse. But it came with a bow on it, so I can call it a gift. For our transition, we like to highlight a fan cover fan remix. Found a good amount of remixes of LocoRoco songs specifically, including one that I didn't end up doing because I think the version I picked is delightful and fun. There was a metal version, and that was weird and weirdly good too. But yeah, I found a version that's a little bit closer to the original, but with like a recorder and all sorts of other instruments. And that is by the YouTube channel PPF. And it's just delightful. It's fun. So I hope you all enjoy that. We will be right back.
Right, we go from happy, singing, basic textured blobs doing their happy, fun time to stop invaders to the horrors and gritty real-life war with Russian and American conflict. Oh, yeah, it's polar opposites, baby. Time to talk about Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Now, this is the second time we've brought up a Call of Duty game on the show. In episode 39, all the way almost 2 years ago, I talked about Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. So, a couple years after that game released, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 is the 6th Call of Duty game. And it released November 10th, 2009, worldwide on Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and PC. Like how there was a DS version of Modern Warfare, an alternate reality companion narrative called Call of Duty Modern Warfare Mobilized released on the same day on Nintendo DS. Like, it's got the same key art as Modern Warfare 2, but it's a different story and it's a whole different developer. And it's a DS version too, because Call of Duty is starting to really take on its essence and become super big and massive in popularity. A remastered version of the Modern Warfare 2 campaign would launch worldwide on PlayStation 4 on March 30th, 2020, with releases on Xbox One and PC a month later on April 30th. You may have forgotten about this because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we were all playing something like Animal Crossing, New Horizons, or Doom Eternal, or something like that. Modern Warfare 2 was developed by Infinity Ward and published by Activision. It is a first-person shooter, and this game really signified Call of Duty's ascent to domination in the industry, especially as a first-person shooter, especially after being a successful sequel to its previous Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare game. It involves a faster pace of play with boots on the ground, especially when you compare it to other shooters at the time, like the Halo series, and it also involves a more realistic amount of bullets to take down an enemy. The plot of Modern Warfare 2, it's 5 years after the previous game, and despite those events where you prevented a nuclear war, the ultra-nationalists ultimately seize control of Russia, and Imran Zakhaev becomes a martyr. As a result, Zakhaev's protege, Vladimir Makarov, commits to a 5-year campaign of vengeance against the West with acts of terrorism. In 2016, Private First Class Joseph Allen, whose actions in Afghanistan impress U.S. Army General Shepard, he's embedded into Makarov's team, who commit a mass shooting at an airport in Moscow, killing multiple Russian civilians. Makarov, aware of Allen's true identity, kills the American, leaving his body at the airport to implicate the United States in a false flag operation. So, obviously, tensions between Russia and the US greatly escalate, while Sergeant Gary Roach Sanderson teams up with the previous game's playable character, now Captain John Soap McTavish, to gain intelligence on Makarov's plans as a part of the Special Forces Unit Task Force 141. The big questions here are, what are Makarov's grander ambitions? Who is Makarov's nemesis, who needs to be rescued from imprisonment in the Russian Far East? And who else is pulling the strings behind the Russian-American conflict? Joe, here's where I'll ask you, what are our experiences with Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2?
So I've never played it. I continue my trend of not playing Call of Duty games just because I'm just not a huge first-person shooter guy. But I do remember this game being a massive deal when it came out. It was impossible to avoid at that time. Like, a term that got thrown around for years before that game was, oh, this is their attempt at a Halo killer. Like, Halo killer was the term, because Halo at that point was like a dominating force of first-person shooters. And then this came out, and honestly, if I remember it correctly, from my point of view, like, this is the game that actually did it.
Yeah.
It's the Halo killer that killed Halo. And this game is specifically the one where, like, I'm sure Call of Duty was a sizable franchise before this because, you know, this is the 6th game. You don't get 6 games if you're not at least profitable. But this is the one that made Call of Duty, for a really long time, the video game.
Yes.
So that's really all I remember. I don't know anything about the game itself. I remember the no Russian stuff, which I'm sure you'll get into in a bit.
Oh yeah.
And I just remember how high profile it became after it came out.
Yeah, I think you have it right. I don't think it's, changing history to say that In 2007, Halo 3 was on top of the first-person shooter world. And then Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare came out. And it's like, oh, a game to challenge Halo. They had Call of Duty World at War the next year. It was kind of like, I think it was Vietnam War kind of flashback stuff. It's like, oh, okay, it's Treyarch. It's a different one. And then this put the bullet in the ground. Like, you had, ODST, you had Reach, fine. But this took Call of Duty to the stratosphere. And then you had Black Ops the next year, and then Modern Warfare 3, Black Ops 2, like it went on from there. And like we've seen Call of Duty be an annual franchise to this day. And it's because like this kind of took the rocket boosters to the next level. I think you're absolutely right. Kind of saying that like, this is the one that, not that Halo died, but this cemented the Call of Duty supremacy in the industry.
It broke Master Chief's hold on the genre.
Yeah.
Which was something that people had been trying to do for years. And it took a really long time for Call of Duty to have that wrestled away from them by a different genre, which would be Battle Royale, which I believe both Call of Duty and Battlefield have both started getting into.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's a really, really interesting point that you can point to on the timeline of this is why the Call of Duty mines exist. This specific game.
Yeah. So I think it was important to talk about. And it was also important on the soundtrack front. But we'll get to that shortly. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 was a game that I got at a midnight launch. I was living in Ann Arbor at the time, for doing undergrad at University of Michigan. And local game shop was open for a midnight launch for Modern Warfare 2. I'm like, you know what? It's the game. Everyone's talking about it. I liked playing the first Modern Warfare enough. So, all right, if everyone else, my friends are going out to get it, I'll get it too. And, the campaign has its moments, especially the no Russian level, which, we'll definitely talk about. But it also has like a big betrayal at the end. And that's another big moment that, people look back on with, some nostalgia in a way, or like, oh man, like that one hurt, like that cutscene. So it has its moments, but it's brief. And, you'll see Call of Duty eventually go on to different things, certainly. But this was a huge game at the time. And I think, looking back on it, like it's still a remarkable accomplishment at the time, for kind of instilling what Call of Duty is and has become. So, surprisingly, there isn't much development information out there on wikias and interviews and the like about Modern Warfare 2. If anything, it's more talk about how Activision wasn't really sure how to handle this game's marketing. So, as I mentioned, we're coming off of 2008's Call of Duty World at War from Treyarch, and that was the 5th game in the series. So previously, the year before, it was 2007's Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. So it would make sense that this next game would be considered Call of Duty 6, and that was how it was first kind of thought of. But then it was first announced under the title of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 by Activision on December 3rd, 2008. And then they retracted its announcement saying that, any information about an upcoming Call of Duty game was speculative. And Infinity Ward was like, we have not announced what project we're working on. Like, what the heck? It'd be like 2 months later when Activision officially announced Modern Warfare 2 and set a tentative release date for holiday 2009. Yeah, that's right. In initial teaser trailers, the title was just that. Modern Warfare 2. No Call of Duty anywhere. In fact, it would take until July 2009 for like the box art being posted by Robert Bowling, like one of the directors on the game. And that would be like one of the first times that we'd see Call of Duty attached to Modern Warfare 2 for the game's logo. So it's speculated that the developers wanted to consider the game a new intellectual property, like separate it from Call of Duty. Modern Warfare is its own thing. But then as a result, people speculate that the brand recognition was way down, especially as, must have been some feedback that they got when they brought the game to E3 2009. The industry gets together and they're like, Yet, people don't really know this is a Call of Duty game. You may struggle with this one as far as your numbers that you're hoping to hit. So, while Call of Duty was ultimately added back into the marketing, the menus in the game still refer to the title as simply Modern Warfare 2. And if you think about the recognition now, you say Modern Warfare 2, and yeah, okay, everyone knows you're talking about this game, this Call of Duty game. But then, again, as we talked about, Call of Duty hadn't hit that rocket booster to the stratosphere. And so there was still quite a heavy amount of risk involved there. This game was actually also released alongside an HD remaster of the original Call of Duty game, which I had no idea and totally forgot about.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah, so apparently special editions of the game included a free download token, but it was ultimately released standalone in December 2009. There were also other partnerships with like Mad Catz for controllers and like Monster Energy drink, but then the Prestige edition release of the game also included fully functioning night vision goggles, imprinted with the Modern Warfare 2 logo, and a stand modeled after the head of the character Soap McTavish. The goggles were powered by 5 AA batteries, and you could see up to 50 feet in absolute darkness. I hope it was worth it.
Probably not. Wow.
Do you also remember how in that Modern Warfare episode we talked about how it had a Wii version? Which, oddly enough, it actually launched on the same day that Modern Warfare 2 did. Yeah, all the other consoles were getting Modern Warfare 2, and here's the Wii. We got the original Modern Warfare in 2009.
It's here, finally. The game you've been looking forward to.
So, yeah, because Infinity Ward was using the next step of their engine, the IW Engine 4, as opposed to 3 for COD 4, yeah, a Wii version of Modern Warfare 2 was not going to happen. That's not surprising there. Let's talk about No Russian, though, because I think it was one of those moments in the industry where you have to think in 2007, we're still at a time where Fox News in the United States is having segments about the sex box and how Mass Effect has these sex scenes, and like we're still not taking gaming seriously, or games are trying to be mature, but are they handling it in the best way? And so here comes this scene, which we kind of already talked about in the plot. It happens early enough in the game, certainly in the game's first act, so it's not really spoilers, where you play this undercover American private operative, and you're embedded into Makarov's cell here, this main antagonist of the game, and they carry out this terrorist attack on this Russian airport. The idea of No Russian being, hey, remember, don't speak any Russian. Remember, no Russian. They don't want us to hear us speaking Russian, and they're trying to set up the Americans being the one to carry out this terrible act of violence. And it's a shocking scene. You do not have to pull the trigger at all. That doesn't mean, people didn't. And of course, then the game reinforces that, you were known all along. Your character dies as a result. So it's like a direct punishment for your actions, whether or not you even took them. But it's definitely a shock value thing. Modern Warfare 3 would try the same sort of thing with a scene of like a car bomb in Paris that killed a young girl. Like they definitely try for like the shock value there. And it was definitely a huge controversy at the time because it's the conversation of it. Is it necessary? Is this game's trying to be a mature art form, to try to, have really powerful storytelling with, topics that we wouldn't normally broach. And you have the element of being that first person perspective and the character agency and the player agency and all the conversations there. Was it even handled the right way? And while there were some, conversations like this, like, is this an important step for games? Was this necessary? You definitely had those to be like, see, this is why violent video games, etc., etc., etc. So it's definitely one of those memorable moments when you play the game, for better or for worse. And I think it was kind of like a marked point in the industry as far as like, what can games do, and is it necessary to have these kind of mature storytelling elements in games.
And I think that's a very important sort of thing to ask, because I do believe that, like, you know, there should be video games that are about some less than great subjects. Granted, I cannot speak for was it done well, etc., etc. But I think a lot of the news coverage at that time, I remember having a real air of, these people think that the developers at Infinity Ward were just sitting behind their desks and going, man, wouldn't it be sick if you did a terrorist attack?
Yep.
Yeah, man. That didn't happen. I could, even without playing the game, I can guarantee you that's not what was happening in the office. And so I think in that specific way, the coverage was a little overblown. But I don't know. It's hard for me to have a full opinion on No Russian, because again, I've never played the game. But I do very much remember the coverage around that.
At the same time, I think it's telling that we haven't really seen a similar kind of moment in the industry as polarizing or as shocking as that.
Which is really weird when you remember that this is the game that made Call of Duty the video game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've seen some mature storytelling elements. I think my mind goes to Spec Ops: The Line and the horrors of war that are portrayed in that game. But it's not the digestible few seconds of video that is you shooting innocent civilians at an airport. Like, that gets so blown out of proportion and taken out of context and fuels a lot of anger, rightfully so, but that's its point. It's hard to speak on both sides of that, honestly. But it is telling that I don't think the industry has really tried to do anything on that level for fear of possible backlash. And to the point where now, when they had the campaign that was remastered last year in 2020, and I'm sure maybe there was even a patch for the original game, there's a prompt of, hey, there's a disturbing scene in this game. Do you want to skip it? We can also let you know when it's coming up, and you can make the choice then if you want to skip it, or you can decline and play through it. And I can't think of another example where a game's had to kind of bring up that sort of censor option for a scene.
Yeah, I can't think of one either. I'm sure there's like some horror game somewhere that does it.
So yeah, it's an important thing to talk to when we're talking about like the game and its impact and all of that, because Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 was reviewed very well with a Metacritic average of 94 on consoles. It got an 86 on PC, with praise for its campaign, its multiplayer, the amount of content that was available throughout the game's different modes, although it did receive some criticism for the short length of the campaign. It's about like 6 hours long, and what some reviewers considered an overall lack of innovation. It's not doing too much new compared to the original Modern Warfare, but it does look and perform better when it's on a newer engine, and it's, you know, a bigger scale overall, but you're not doing anything really new as far as gameplay goes. Oddly enough, the remaster has a Metacritic of 71, although primarily the biggest problem with that is that it's being sold as a short campaign and nothing else along with it. So like, that's the biggest knock on it. So if that's the way you want to play it today, that's fine. That's a fair option, I think, but just be considered of its brevity. The game sold approximately 4.7 million units in the United States and the UK combined in its first 24 hours of its release.
Wow.
Huge for the video game industry. The total revenue from the first day sales in the US and the UK was $310 million, making Modern Warfare 2 the biggest entertainment launch in history at the time, surpassing its predecessor of Modern Warfare. In 2013, total sales were estimated at 22.7 million copies, with the game being the 8th best-selling Xbox 360 game of all time. After it became backward compatible on Xbox One, the NPD Group reported that Modern Warfare 2 was the 8th best-selling video game in the United States during August 2018. It had sold more copies in that month than the then most recent entry in the series, Call of Duty World War II, which came out in November 2017.
Jeez.
This game is a monster. And that's a really impressive stat. I was kind of amazed by that, honestly. It takes backwards compatibility for it to crack the top 10 in sales in a month. And that's almost 10 years after its release. Amazing. The game was nominated for Best Game and Best Original Score at really the biggest game award shows. It was nominated for 9 BAFTAs, and it won the Game Award of 2009. In this case, Game being the game retailer in the EU. It was nominated for 9 Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences Awards, which we now know today as the DICE Awards, and it won Outstanding Achievement in Online Gameplay and Action Game of the Year. It was nominated for 6 awards at the Spike Video Game Awards, where it won Best Shooter and Best Multiplayer Game. It was also Game Trailers' Game of the Year in 2009. What is the legacy of Modern Warfare 2 besides taking Call of Duty to those new heights? Well, 2011's Modern Warfare 3 would conclude the trilogy. The 18th installment in the now annual Call of Duty series, Vanguard, launches this Friday, November 5th. And it's expected that 2022's Call of Duty game, which will be from Infinity Ward, will be a reimagining of Modern Warfare 2, as 2019's Modern Warfare also was. I have the privilege of talking about a composer legend on this week of the show. And it is no small feat in which I say the composer that I will talk about today in association with Modern Warfare 2 is Hans Zimmer.
Might be one of the most recognizable composers currently working in music.
Period. Yes. Hans Florian Zimmer was born September 12th, 1957 in Frankfurt, West Germany. He says, quote, "My formal training was 2 weeks of piano lessons. I was thrown out of 8 schools, but I joined a band. I am self-taught, but I've always heard music in my head, and I'm a child of the 20th century. Computers came in very handy." He also says, "My mother was very musical, basically a musician, and my father was an engineer and an inventor. So I grew up modifying the piano, shall we say, which made my mother gasp in horror, and my father would think it was fantastic when I would attach chainsaws and stuff like that to the piano, because he thought it was an evolution in technology."
What does that mean?
Just trying different sounds on the piano, I suppose. Change those strings up in a way, or do little tweaks to it.
Why did he have access to chainsaws, plural?
That's also a good question. Wow. Hans Zimmer would attend the École des Humanités, which is an international boarding school in Canton Bern, Switzerland. He moved to London as a teenager, where he attended Hurtwood House School. He says he was strongly influenced by the film scores of Ennio Morricone, and has cited Once Upon a Time in the West as the score that inspired him to become a film composer. But he began his career in music in the 1970s, playing keyboards and synthesizers with the band Krakatoa. He then worked with the Buggles, and he can briefly be seen in their music video for the 1979 song Video Killed the Radio Star, which is really funny to me that there's probably a shot somewhere in there. Oh, there's young Hans Zimmer. In the 1980s, Zimmer partnered with Stanley Myers, a prolific film composer who wrote the scores for over 60 films. Zimmer and Myers co-founded the London-based Lily Yard recording studio. And then his big turning point came when Hollywood director Barry Levinson was looking for someone to score the 1988 film Rain Man. And his wife heard the soundtrack CD of the anti-apartheid drama A World Apart, for which Zimmer had composed the music. And so they brought Hans Zimmer on to compose the score to Rain Man, and the score was nominated at the Oscars for Best Score. Rain Man won 4 awards that night, and Hans Zimmer's career took off. He has scored more than 200 projects across all mediums. He founded Remote Control Productions, which is a film score company that's based out of Santa Monica, California. And we've mentioned Remote Control Productions quite a few times on original Soundchat because it has plenty of ties to video games and composers that we've already mentioned on the show. People that have worked as proteges of Hans Zimmer and, co-composers and things like that. So these would be Harry Gregson Williams, who is noted as the first remote control productions composer to work on games. And that was with Metal Gear Solid 2. It's, we talked about Metal Gear Solid 2. We talked about Harry Gregson Williams there. Also composers such as Lauren Balfe, Stephen Barton, Jim Dooley, and Steve Jablonski come to mind as remote control productions composers. Hans Zimmer has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He has an asteroid in the main belt named after him. He's received the Order of Merit of the Federal Republic of Germany, and he was recently inducted as a Disney legend. He is currently doing a Hans Zimmer live worldwide tour with a European leg planned for 2022.
Which I think some of those, he's also very good friends with Tina Guo, who we have talked about for Journey, the cellist. She posts pictures with him quite often because I think she works with him a lot. Yeah. So that's also another connection there.
There you go. You can follow Hans Zimmer on Twitter at Hans Zimmer, HANSZIMMER. So for Hans Zimmer's discography, well, let's get the games out of the way because he wrote the main themes for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. That was like his first game project. He also wrote main themes for Crysis 2 and Skylanders Spyro's Adventure. And he also contributed some music to Arena of Valor and FIFA 19. He also had some TV projects with The Bible, Planet Earth 2, Blue Planet 2, 7 Worlds, 1 Planet, and the theme music for The Critic, The Crown, and Genius, among other TV projects. But it's film where Hans Zimmer's bread is buttered. And he has been nominated for 11 Academy Awards for Best Original Score. These would be for Rain Man, The Lion King, The Preacher's Wife, As Good as It Gets, The Prince of Egypt, The Thin Red Line, Gladiator, Sherlock Holmes, Inception, Interstellar, and Dunkirk. Joe, pop quiz time. Hans Zimmer has only won one Academy Award for Best Original Score. Which of those films would it have been for?
I'm going to guess Lion King.
You are correct. It is The Lion King. Well done. So, yeah, 11 nominations, 1 win for Hans Zimmer. But he has done a ton of film score work. And so just a selection of the ones here that I decided to include are Driving Miss Daisy, Thelma and Louise, A League of Their Own, Muppet Treasure Island, Mission Impossible 2, The Road to El Dorado, Black Hawk Down, Pearl Harbor, The Ring, The Last Samurai, Shark Tale, the Madagascar series, the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy, the Pirates of the Caribbean series, minus the original, The Da Vinci Code, The Simpsons movie, Kung Fu Panda series, Megamind, Rango, Man of Steel, 12 Years a Slave, Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, Hidden Figures, The Boss Baby series, Blade Runner 2049, Dark Phoenix, Wonder Woman 1984, No Time to Die, and, appropriately, for what is playing on HBO Max right now and the internet's talking about, he scored Dune.
Can I just point out how absolutely hilarious it is that in the middle of all those serious movies, the Boss Baby series...
Yep, absolutely. Because he's like definitely a lot of connections with DreamWorks and all that. So definitely is DreamWorks projects there for sure. But yeah, composing on Dune, and he's also tapped for its sequel for part 2. So yeah, that's relevant. There were a lot of articles when you look up like, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 soundtrack interview. A lot of articles at the time that was just, they're all like, oh my gosh, it's Hans Zimmer scoring a video game. Oh my gosh, he was incredible. It sounds so good. It's Hans Zimmer, guys, in video games. Like, video games are being taken seriously.
I don't even need to read the articles to assume that a lot of it had implications of a real composer has come to work in video games. 2009 was a weird time.
Yeah, you're right about that, but it makes it even more strange when you consider that, as I mentioned, Zimmer only contributed the main theme to the game, while the rest of the score was undertaken by Lauren Balfe. It doesn't help that the iTunes page for the officially released score credits Zimmer only. But there are these interviews and articles that talk about, Zimmer and, coming to video games. And it was his first video game project. There was I guess the Simpsons game as well, but that was really just taking his work on the Simpsons movie and bringing it into games. So it really wasn't the same. So when Zimmer was talking about his, first project working in games, really the interest was only there because it was a combination of, well, my friend Harry Gregson Williams did the score for the previous Modern Warfare game. He got to introduce me to the people at Activision as a result, and I could see where the technology for games was at this point in time. When it came to helping Balfe with the score and all that, he says, quote, "There came a point where I was like, oh my God, this is a lot more than a movie. But I never added it up because then I would have panicked." So yeah, that makes sense. And of course, locations in the game like Brazil and Russia helped dictate some instrument choices, but really it was essentially like approaching it on a basic level and scoring the game like it was a blockbuster movie. And I think, mission accomplished on that front. So let's get to talking about the score to Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. And what better place to start in the 5 critical tracks with critical track number 1, opening titles. This is the track that is credited as being composed by Hans Zimmer, and it plays partly in the opening credits of the game, but fully in the end credits. I think, personally, it's kind of amazing how much, when I think of Call of Duty music, if there had to be one theme that's like the Call of Duty theme across all of the games that it has, had released over the years, this track is still the Call of Duty music for me. That I hear it and I think yeah, that's Call of Duty. Particularly at this point in the clip here. It's a deliberate march, but it has this epic scale to it and the melody kind of going through the orchestra. Just really memorable piece of music here that, yeah, it's for this game, but I feel like it maybe either has echoes, ramifications, or people just remember this. And maybe that more speaks to, again, the point in time when Call of Duty took off. But I think of this track as, if there's one theme from Call of Duty that represents all of it, it's this one.
See, I hear this song and I'm like, yeah, this is definitely the same guy that did the music for Pirates of the Caribbean. Most of it. I don't know why, but that's the immediate place my brain goes hearing this song. It's good, but this is my first time hearing it ever in any way. So, I don't know, my brain goes directly to that.
I don't think it's going to be the last time you think that, to be honest, because my brain works the same way when it comes to my affinity for the Pirates of the Caribbean scores. And so certain points of music will definitely call back to that. So let's get to the second track on the 5 critical tracks here. And this one is Extraction Point. Just another quintessential piece for this game in particular. This plays in a few missions, such as Takedown, Second Son, Whiskey Hotel, and Loose Ends. It is also in the multiplayer, the Army Ranger Spawn and Victory theme. So this piece is all over this game. And especially the beginning of the piece, not necessarily in the clip. It's this low stringed electric guitar note that's like plays along this driving drum rhythm. And that's another part of the piece that is just like, oh yeah, this is Call of Duty. This is Modern Warfare 2 if I had to peg it. Like a great clip. But the clip here, really shows the culmination of adding orchestration to that. And it's like a dark, epic kind of scale here. Again, you want to talk about a track that feels like Pirates of the Caribbean. Almost in a way, like I think of At World's End, like when you're kind of at the Maelstrom, kind of at the end of the game.
Yeah.
You can almost have like, you don't really have this environment in Modern Warfare 2, but like waves crashing around you and swirling and all that. You definitely feel the Zimmer influence here. And that comes, from Lorne Balfe being like a protege there, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they kind of work together and goes hand in hand.
See, I hear the song and my first thought is the Batman scores.
Sure.
Specifically Dark Knight, I assume is what I'm thinking of. It's a very similar note progression in one of the pieces, I want to say. But yeah, no, this does certainly sound like I keep bringing up movies that I know Hans Zimmer did because I don't have, look, man, that's how my worldview works, unfortunately. But it does definitely fit the bill of like, they wanted it to sound like a big blockbuster film. And like you said, mission accomplished. They did really well. And this is a very good example of that.
Yeah, that's a really good point comparing it to Batman. Like, yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that's the exact part.
For sure. I can see that. And yeah, I think that's only fair with Hans Zimmer's broad field of work that you compare it to other tracks that he's done. Even though like Lorne Balfe, composed this and the rest of them, but you can't deny the Hans Zimmer influence there.
Which, for this being the rest of them you said are Lorne Balfe, correct?
Correct, yes.
Because I went and looked it up on Spotify, because I had looked up if it was on Spotify, and it is, before we started, but then I went to look it up again when you mentioned it, but yeah, the whole album is credited to Hans Zimmer.
Yeah, miscredited there,
Every track on the sound. That kind of sucks, but what can you do?
I think it was just Call of Duty being like, we're going to take ourselves seriously, look at games at our place in entertainment. Maybe that was the point. Anyway, critical track number 3 is, oh my gosh, another key one from this game. This one is Ordnance. Ah, yes, a classic piece that, if your mind works as I do, you are drawn right back to No Russian, where it plays, as well as the endgame climax. But I hear this and I'm taken right back to that elevator as it's going up and about to open into the airport. And this piece with this dark pulsing bass and then the supporting strings, it really doesn't do a whole lot as far as like big action swells, nor should it for such a horrific moment of violence.
Yeah, you're not supposed to feel like a hero in this scene.
Absolutely not. But I think it does a great job of just building this terrific dread and tension. And for the last couple pieces being like these heroic themes, for this one to be like on the other end of that spectrum and play it so well, I think Ordnance had to be here for such a controversial moment in the game.
This one feels a little bit closer to the video gamey side of the music spectrum in this game, because this feels very video game, if that makes sense. Like I could hear this in a Metal Gear Solid game.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like the specifically the games that take a lot from film in terms of inspiration and stuff like that. But I could definitely 100% hear this in a Metal Gear Solid, no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, and that's where you kind of get like the Harry Gregson Williams a little bit there. Yep. It's all connected under that RCP umbrella there. Number 4 on the Critical 5. Let's get to this one, and this is Code of Conduct. All right, Joe, here's your Pirates of the Caribbean. There it is.
Oh, yeah.
And so this one here plays in a cutscene in the Exodus mission, which takes place in the Virginian suburbs in Act 2, as well as in the mission The Enemy of My Enemy, which is in the Afghanistan plane boneyard after the big betrayal in Act 3. I'm just definitely drawn to tracks that capture this Pirates of the Caribbean-like sound, and it's just more that Zimmer sound in general. This one really just stands out to me in that regard. I don't have, big memories of like swearing vengeance against that big betrayal or anything like that, but this is one that flipping through the soundtrack, it really stood out to me.
And I think it's my favorite specifically because it sounds so much like Pirates of the Caribbean. And that's really weird to me because my favorite Pirates of the Caribbean score is the one that Hans Zimmer didn't write.
Yeah.
Like the one, but that doesn't mean I don't love his work in Dead Man's Chest, and his score of At World's End is the only good thing in that movie. So yeah, I'm drawn to this as well. Again, because this sounds very Pirates, like obnoxiously Pirates of the Caribbean. It's great.
It is great, but it's amazing how we get like those different thoughts of pulling it from different media that we've watched over the years. So let's wrap up the Critical 5 then with this track here from Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, and it's Coup de Grace. And when we talk about variety in tracks on the soundtrack, here's where you get the big orchestral, emotional swells. This track plays in the beginning of the Wolverines mission, as well as Loose Ends, where it's associated with playing during that big bad betrayal. Oh boy. Another one of those ones where you can like end the game early if you do a certain action at the beginning of the game during the training mission, which is interesting to be told. But it's one where people think of, slow motion shots and killing characters and things like that. And, just it's rough to think back. And like, it's one of the big emotional moments that Call of Duty has honestly had across its games, that people remember that one. So the big emotional music that plays during that, I definitely had a lot of YouTube comments that were bemoaning this fact.
You can really feel the emotion in this one, which, as somebody that does not play Call of Duty and, looks at it from afar, emotion is not usually something most people would associate Call of Duty with, just because of its reputation. Not saying that is a deserved reputation, but I don't know. It's just not something that I think of in the same sentence as the series. But I will take your word for it that this is a very emotional moment, and the score does seem to reflect that. So
it's definitely a shocking moment. They pulled it off well, for sure. All right, let's get to a couple tracks on the cutting room floor. I have two. This first one is Onwards. So shouts out to my brother Mark, who helped me look over this list and do a little check here or there. Big Modern Warfare 2 fan, especially back in the day, played a lot of multiplayer. And so this was his recommendation for putting this song in. I had a song called Protocol in there, mostly because when Video Game Donkey had a video when he was highlighting Modern Warfare 2 and had this kind of music come up, we said like, oh, that's from Protocol. It's from this song. And a lot of people in those comments were like, oh, it's the Donkey video, I found it. But this one's a really neat one, and he definitely recommended this one because it plays in the Gulag mission, as well as the first half of the vehicle escape in The Enemy of My Enemy. And so the Gulag is the mission where you are rescuing prisoner number 627 from the Gulag in the Russian Far East, and it's Makarov's nemesis, and oh, who could it be? And so you definitely have some darker action theming here, perhaps even some like Russian Middle East instrument inspiration. It's a cool sound, and I definitely recommended this and wanted to, give a shout out to him. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, it was a good choice. This song sounds good. I don't really know what else to say about some of these tracks, so I apologize if that's the vibe that I've put off. But yeah, no, this is just a good piece of music score.
Absolutely. And then the other one I have on the cutting room floor is Chain of Command. This track plays in the Op4 multiplayer mission, so when you're playing as the opposing forces, and also when stealth is broken in the Cliffhanger mission. And that's the famous snow mission. I think it's like the third mission of the whole game. It's the one where like you're on snowmobiles and the game was kind of like revealed with this mission. So when kind of the action picks up here in this pretty famous mission in the game, this is the music that plays. I also like it because the solo violin makes some little accent appearances, and that's really neat because you definitely have like these big orchestral action pieces or whatever with the drums going, but then you got the solo violin coming in, and I know, Joe, you'd also appreciate that.
Yeah, it's also a really cool part. It's not like the melody, obviously, but it gives this song a really, really good feel and kind of sets it apart from the rest of the soundtrack. I'm pretty happy with that.
What will I never forget about Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2? If it weren't obvious, No Russian has kind of scarred me in a way. Not in like I close my eyes and I have nightmares about it at night, but like it's one of those moments in the video game discourse, if you will, when it comes to an era where like video games are being taken more seriously as an art form, as a medium. And, granted, I don't know if we've had a moment that kind of marks that same level of controversy and is it necessary in games because of just the couple seconds that are just so shocking and abhorrent. But in the narrative, like it sets up the overarching conflict and for good reason. And it definitely brings up all those thoughts of discussion of like, well, you don't have to pull the trigger. And there are studies with violent video games and all that. And that, doesn't really encourage, actual violent behavior in the world, et cetera, et cetera. But it's one of those tentpole moments. And I don't think you can bring up or think about Modern Warfare 2 without acknowledging that this is a thing from that game. But the Hans Zimmer score contribution is notable, especially as far as like games trying to be taken more seriously, more cinematic, given the movie score treatment. So it's kind of a combination of those factors.
For me, it's, like I said earlier, 100% just like watching this game, not only with the discourse around, Russian, obviously, but just become one of the biggest video games to ever exist. It was really weird to be on the edge of that. And of course, this was 2009. I was a stupid, edgy teenager. And I don't play Call of Duty. I play real video games. Don't be like, if you're a teenager listening to this, don't be like that. It's stupid. But it's impossible to not remember how big of an impact this game had on everything around it, good or bad. So, yeah, very interesting times.
Yeah, and it's why Call of Duty is still a thing today, honestly.
It may not be as big as it was then, but it's still around.
For sure, and it continues to pull down numbers as far as sales and player engagement and all that. It's still a massive, massive force. So, yeah, a massive video game about the horrors of war and geopolitical conflicts.
And then also Call of Duty.
Man, you know, what a pairing between LocoRoco and Modern Warfare 2. I'll tell you what.
Beautiful.
I think that just puts it perfectly, whether it's about controversy or, you know, fighting off invaders. It's just that kind of week here on Original Soundchat. So thank you so much for listening to us. You can follow me on Twitter at PeteSpeakEasy. Joe is over at StringPixel. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, but it's that MP3 podcast version that you really want. And that's hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. That's where Joe's other podcast, Smasher Pieces, is hosted. And you can find Smasher Pieces and Original Soundchat wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, even on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Not only do we have the Spotify feed of podcast episodes, we also have a playlist on Spotify where if we talk about a video game track on this show and it's on Spotify, it's getting added to that monster playlist. Joe, what's being added this week?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, Call of Duty is in fact on Spotify, granted miscredited for most of the tracks. And LocoRoco also just happens to be on Spotify, so both these games are heading to the playlist.
Excellent. When you're done listening, you can find us on social media for the show at Soundchat OST. And you can leave some feedback for us there. How are we doing with these episodes? As well as suggestions for games to cover, not only throughout this year, but into 2022. Speaking of this year ending, not only is Best of 2021 looming and terrifying, but at the end of November, for the Thanksgiving week here in the United States, it's our Thanksgiving Q&A annual episode. And so we need your questions. Do you want to ask questions of us, whether it's tied to video games and music or anything else? How are we doing in our lives? What do you want to know? Ask some questions of us. The best place to do that would be on Twitter at SoundchatOST. Joe, who are we talking about next week?
I will be talking about Kenichi Tsuchiya.
Yeah, it's going to be no pairing like it was this week, but I will be talking about Edgar Froese. All right. To play us out, let's talk about that main title theme. The main intro theme. Look to YouTuber Music Mike 512, and he did a violin and piano cover with Harbinger Doom. So Music Mike 512 featuring Harbinger Doom on YouTube had the main titles theme here from Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. It's a good one. Thanks so much for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.